Tonight, we're traveling deep into the shadowy, unpredictable world of crime and punishment in medieval England. Ever asked yourself what fate you'd meet if you became a criminal in that brutal, chaotic age? You're about to live that experience firsthand, and let's just say, it's not for the faint of heart. But before we dive in, take a second to like this video and subscribe. Only if you genuinely dig what I do here, and hit the comments to let me know your location and current time. I always love seeing who's watching from across the globe. Alright, lights down, fan humming if you've got one. Let's get into it. You've just opened your eyes in 13th century England. Year 1202, to be exact. You're in the city of Lincoln, a northern hub of stone buildings, tight alleyways, and odours both familiar and foreign. The grand cathedral rises above the town like a crown of cold grey, and the bells toll through the chilly morning mist. The streets are already alive with traders shouting, carts clattering over cobblestones, and the unmistakable funk of livestock and humanity mixing in the air. Lincoln might seem like a decent place to wake up. After all, it's a key commercial city with a steady pulse of activity. But beneath the surface lies a growing problem. The crime rate here is wild. In a population of just 7,000 people, authorities have recorded 114 murders, 89 violent robberies, and 65 assaults involving serious wounds. Yet astonishingly, only 2 people have been executed for all these crimes. On paper, that might look like your odds are good if you're thinking about stealing to get by. But don't get cocky. Justice here is strange, fast when it wants to be, and terrifyingly personal. You step out of bed, a straw pallet above a drafty tavern, and your feet hit creaking boards that do little to keep out the cold. Through a cracked wooden shutter, you catch a glimpse of damp morning fog snaking through the narrow lanes below. Your stomach growls. You have no coin, no friends, and no idea how to make it through the day. Petty theft, maybe. You think about slipping a coin pouch from a passerby or swiping fruit from a market stall. But here's what you need to know before making any sudden moves. Law enforcement, as you know it, doesn't exist. No police on patrol. No crime scene investigators. No courts with lengthy trials and appeals. But what does exist is something far more intimate and more dangerous. This is a world where everyone knows each other and strangers like you stick out like a bruised thumb. Gossip travels faster than the wind, and your face will be remembered. As you push open the tavern door and step into the morning chill, your eye is drawn to the edge of town. A wooden frame, a gigot, stands tall, and from it dangles a corpse, half mummified by the wind and pecked raw by birds. It's been there for weeks, a grotesque scarecrow warning everyone who passes. The sight makes your breath hitch, but hunger urges you forward. Just then, a gruff voice interrupts your thoughts. Thinking about making trouble? An old man asks, appearing beside you without a sound. His face is worn like old leather, eyes sharp, beard streaked with grey. He jerks his head toward the gibbet. That one thought he was clever, too. Lifted a purse, spat at the sheriff. Now look at him. You hesitate. But I've heard the law's slow around here. Barely anyone gets caught, right? The man snorts a laugh, dry and thin as dead leaves rustling on stone. Some slip through, sure, for a while. But the law ain't the only thing you gotta watch for. This town, it's a nest of loyalties. Steal from a baker, and you're not just facing a fine. You're facing the whole baker's guild, their cousins, their apprentices. Rob a merchant, and his sons, his wife, and probably his priest will be hunting you. People around here, we protect our own. That echo of threat clings to you, as you make your way toward the market square. The stalls are buzzing with early trade, baskets of onions, bolts of cloth, wheels of cheese stacked high. The smells are almost intoxicating. And that apple, right there on the corner stall, so red and round it hurts your soul. It looks like salvation. But you remember the corpse, the gibbet, the old man's warning, and suddenly your hunger feels less urgent than the fear crawling up your spine. Because in this version of England, justice doesn't always come from above. Sometimes it comes from the people watching you right now. The butcher sharpening his cleaver, the maid with the broom eyeing your hands, even the child holding his mother's hand, whispering something as he points at you. Yes, the law may be flawed, slow, inconsistent, but when it strikes, it leaves no room for mercy. And sometimes the people don't wait for the sheriff. They take care of things themselves. Forget everything you know about due process. In medieval England, justice wasn't about evidence or fair hearings. It was about reputation, hearsay, and who you knew. Trials were fast and unforgiving, often decided by the word of your neighbours more than any proof. If folks thought you looked suspicious or had a dodgy background, that alone could land you in serious trouble. As you move through the marketplace, it becomes painfully clear how deeply status defines how people are treated. A nobleman cuts through the crowd like a ship through water, and everyone clears a path for him without hesitation. His rich cloak and gleaming sword announce his rank louder than words ever could. Just a few feet away, a dishevelled beggar gets shoved hard by a pair of tough-looking apprentices guarding a bakery stand. Clear off, you scab. One growls, no loitering, or we'll call the watch. The beggar mutters something and limps away. That's when it hits you. Your appearance isn't helping. Your clothes don't fit the local fashion, and you move differently. You're already drawing stares, and not the friendly kind. In this society, your place in the social ladder is carved in stone the moment you're born. Trying to act above your rank is seen as suspicious, even dangerous. Simply wandering with no job, no visible purpose, and no one to vouch for you. That could be enough to brand you a vagabond. And vagabonds are treated like criminals. Your stomach makes a louder protest now, a deep growl that earns a wary glance from a nearby bread vendor. You need food, but more importantly, you need legitimacy. Fast, spotting a man hauling barrels into a wagon, you approach with a cautious offer. Need an extra hand? You ask. He looks you over like a butcher inspecting meat. After a long pause, he nods. You look sturdy enough. Help me load these, and I'll give you a penny and a meal. It's not glamorous, but right now, it's salvation. And most importantly, it keeps you out of trouble. You get to work, hands quickly aching from the heavy, rough timber. But you strike up a conversation with the man as you go, fishing for insights into this foreign world. You local? He asks, groaning as he lifts a barrel. Just passing through. You say, keeping your story vague. How's life in Lincoln? He shrugs and wipes his forehead. It's decent. Sheriff does what he can. But things have gotten rough lately. Just a few weeks back, thieves hit Thomas the silversmith's shop, took the lot and nearly killed the poor man. You nod slowly. Did they catch them? One of he says flatly. The rest vanished. The one they caught, hanged right in the square. That's the usual. Unless you steal something petty, less than 12 pence, maybe. Then it's flogging or stocks instead. The job wraps up, and he's true to his word. He hands you a coin and leads you to a local tavern. Inside you're served a steaming bowl of thick, lumpy stewed pottage made of barley peas, maybe some root veg, and a heavy chunk of crusty bread. It's not luxurious, but it's hot, filling, and a massive relief. As the tavern fills up with the after-work crowd, the mood turns lively. Ale flows, dice clatter, and loud stories fly around the room. You sit quietly, listening in on the local chatter. At a nearby table, a group of men are deep in discussion. One leans in, voice low but intense. You hear about William the Tanner. Church says he stole a silver cup. They made him carry a red-hot iron, 3 full paces. Burned. Another asks eagerly, hand blistered up like roast meat. Guilty. They'll string him up by next week. You nearly drop your bread. Trial by ordeal. It sounds unreal, like a twisted fairy tale. But this was real justice in the Middle Ages. The idea was simple and terrifying. If you were innocent, God would protect you. If not, well, your wounds would tell the truth. In the year 1202, where you've somehow landed, these ordeals are still in use, though not for long. Just over a decade later, in 1215, the church would ban its priests from performing them, marking the beginning of the end for one of history's most brutal tests of innocence. But for now, it's still very much in play, and it could be you on trial next. The other option available to the accused, and one slowly gaining ground, was trial by jury, but don't picture a dozen impartial jurors calmly weighing forensic evidence. Juries in medieval England were made up of local men who often knew the defendant personally. Their decision wasn't based on witness, testimony, or cross-examination, but on hearsay, gossip, and the accused standing in the community. If you had a bad reputation, your chances weren't great, regardless of whether you were actually guilty. As the sky darkens, you realize you'll need shelter for the night. With the coin you earned, you could probably buy a spot on the floor of the tavern, crammed in with other travelers, but that idea doesn't sit well. Instead, you decide to ask around for more work, preferably something that includes a place to sleep. When you bring this up to the tavern keeper, he gestures toward the back door. "Try the wool merchant's place," he says. "Tell Geoffrey that what sent you. Might be he's got need for strong hands tonight." You thank him and step out into the encroaching darkness. The sun's gone, and with it Betty's sense of safety. There are no lamps lighting these cobbled streets, just shadows creeping between buildings. Respectable folk are already behind locked doors. Just being out this late without a clear reason is enough to get you in trouble. You pick up your pace, suddenly very aware of how exposed you are, how alien you must look, and how silence in this city can feel threatening. Eventually, you find the merchant's home, a bigger structure than most, with a storefront in front and a home behind it. You knock. After a pause, a teenage boy opens the door, glancing at you with the kind of wary skepticism that says he's been told not to trust strangers. "I'm here on Watt's recommendation," you explain. "Looking for work." He thought Master Geoffrey might be in need of help. The boy vanishes inside, and moments later, a broad-shouldered man steps out. His clothing is good quality but practical. Plain wool dyed a deep brown, no jewellery or flamboyance. "This must be Geoffrey. What sent you?" he asks, sizing you up like a farmer deciding whether a mule is worth buying. "Well, I do need someone tonight. Got a cartload of wool arriving, and these streets aren't as safe as they used to be. You think you can handle yourself if anything goes sideways?" You nod. "Yes, sir," you say, hoping he doesn't ask for proof. "Fine." He grunts. You stay with the cart once it arrives and keep watch until morning. "I'll pay you 3 pennies and let you sleep in the storeroom after." It's the best offer you've had all day. You agree without hesitation, and he leads you around to a gated yard, explaining where the cart will be secured. Now fully dark, the city seems almost deserted. A few guards walk the main roads carrying lanterns, but the alleys and side streets are shrouded in black. Somewhere in the distance, a group of revellers sing drunkenly inside a tavern, their muffled laughter carried on the wind. But otherwise, the silence is oppressive, unnatural compared to any modern city. The cart arrives just in time, before the city gates are locked for the night. The driver and his companion look exhausted and none too trusting of you until Geoffrey shows up and explains your role. You'll stand guard. Don't let anyone near it, he says sharply. Wool's worth gold these days, and thieves know it. You nod, taking your position beside the heavy wooden cart as it's wheeled into the merchant's yard. The other guard takes the first shift while you get a few hours of rest, curled up in your cloak beneath an overhang. As you lie there, waiting for your turn on watch, your mind churns with everything you've seen and learned. This world is a far cry from modern justice. Here, a man's fate depends as much on rumour and social standing as on any proof of guilt. The punishments, execution, whipping, public shaming, are brutal, designed to scare everyone else into obedience. Yet despite the severity, crime is still rampant. The poor have little to lose, and the rich have everything to protect. It's a society teetering between control and chaos. And tonight, you're one bad decision away from falling into the wrong side of it. It's a delicate tension, the looming threat of punishment weighed against the gnawing force of hunger and poverty. You're still chewing on that thought when the other guard gently shakes your shoulder. Time for your shift. The sky is pitch black now, the stars cloaked by thick clouds, and a fine drizzle dampens the night. You pull yourself up and start pacing slowly around the cart, occasionally sheltering beneath a nearby overhang to stay somewhat dry. Every sound seems amplified in the darkness, and your nerves are on edge. Not long after, a subtle but unmistakable sound breaks the silence. Footsteps. Several people, moving with caution, but not quite quiet enough. Your pulse quickens. Trouble, you step back into the shadows, trying to remain unseen, heart thudding like a drumbeat in your ears. Then you see them. 3 shadowy figures approaching from the edge of the yard, creeping closer to the wool-laden cart. Their cloaks are dark, faces partially hidden. One carries what looks like a pry bar. You clear your throat deliberately, the sound cutting through the night. I wouldn't try that if I were you. The intruders freeze. One of them, the biggest, steps forward. His tone is rough and confrontational. And who are you supposed to be? I'm guarding this cart for Geoffrey, the wool merchant. You reply, keeping your tone as calm and firm as you can manage. You'd be wise to turn around before things get ugly. The man chuckles. A cold, mocking sound. 3 of us, one of you. Pretty sure it's already ugly. Before you can answer, a window creaks open above, and a familiar voice shouts down. What's happening out there, John?
William, get downstairs!
The thieves glance at each other, suddenly unsure. Footsteps pound inside the house. After a tense pause, they retreat into the night, one of them tossing a final warning over his shoulder. This isn't over, stranger. We'll remember. Moments later, Geoffrey rushes into the yard, flanked by 2 burly men, likely household staff. His eyes scan the darkness. They were after the shipment, weren't they? Yes, you confirm. 3 of them. They ran off once they knew you were awake. Geoffrey's jaw tightens. It's happening more and more. Just last month, Martin the Dyer lost everything, and one of his apprentices was found stabbed. He exhales heavily. There was a time merchants could sleep easy. That time's gone. Doesn't the sheriff patrol at night? You ask. Geoffrey snorts, unimpressed. The sheriff has maybe a dozen men to cover the whole city. They do what they can, but it's never enough. And frankly, some of them are just as bad as the criminals. That last part hits you hard. So far, you've seen a justice system that relies more on fear and improvisation than order. Unlike modern law enforcement, medieval policing is patchwork at best. The sheriff serves as the king's man, tasked with enforcing the law, collecting dues, and overseeing punishments, but with few resources. Day-to-day security often falls to local watchmen or the community itself. If someone cries for help, others are legally bound to join the chase under a system called the hue and cry. But law enforcement here has another problem: corruption. As Geoffrey implies, some men of authority take bribes, ignore crimes, or even act as criminals themselves. The rest of the night drags on uneventfully, though sleep never really comes. Your eyes flick toward every corner, your ears tuned for any sound. When the sun finally peeks over the rooftops, Geoffrey returns. He seems satisfied. "You did well," he says, handing over 3 pennies and nodding toward a storeroom behind the shop. "You can rest in there." Then he pauses. "If you're looking to stay, I could use steady help. These are unpredictable days. And I trust people who don't lose their head when things get rough." It's more than an offer. It's a path forward, a way to become part of something. As a servant in Geoffrey's household, you'd gain more than wages, a roof, meals, protection, and a place within the intricate social hierarchy of Lincoln. In this world, that kind of security is rare and priceless. In a society where wandering without ties or purpose could easily draw suspicion, having a connection, any connection, was no small matter. Lying down on the rough pallet in Geoffrey's storeroom, your body finally surrendering to fatigue, you reflect on your first full day. So far, you've managed to walk the narrow path of legality, scraping together honest work, rather than slipping into the tempting world of petty crime. But the temptation was real, and so were the consequences. That wool cart you stood guard over wasn't just a random delivery. In medieval England, wool was the crown jewel of the economy, England's most prized export. Here in Lincoln, a city thriving on the back of textile trade, a cart full of raw fleece is practically a treasure chest on wheels. Stealing it would be no minor offence. That sort of theft would bring the full weight of the law crashing down, likely ending in a noose. As sleep tugs at your eyes, your thoughts swirl with all you've witnessed. The gibbet on the city's edge, the eerie traditions of trial by ordeal, the shadowy thieves who crept through the night. It's a world held together not by compassion or due process, but by punishment and fear. Justice, here, is a thing wielded with blunt force, quick, public, and often final. Your last thought as you drift into sleep in this world, the boundary between surviving and becoming an outlaw is razor thin. One misstep, and you could end up swinging from a rope. Morning comes with the sound of church bells echoing through the streets. Sunlight slants through a narrow window, warming the modest storeroom. For a moment, you feel lost between worlds, caught between the familiar pace of the present and the brutal rhythm of the 13th century. But memories of the previous day come rushing back, your arrival in Lincoln, the nighttime standoff with thieves, Geoffrey's unexpected job offer. As you stretch the stiffness from your limbs, a commotion outside draws your attention. You make your way to the front of the house, where a growing crowd fills the street, buzzing with energy and curiosity. People are whispering, pointing, jostling for a better view of something ahead. What's going on? You ask a young woman on the edge of the crowd. They finally got the Warrant family, she replies, eyes wide. They've been stealing from folks all over for years, and now they've been caught. The name rings a bell. From what you've picked up during your short time here, the Warrants are infamous, whole family suspected of countless thefts across Norfolk and beyond, somehow managing to avoid serious punishment despite multiple court appearances. You fall in with the crowd as they follow the sheriff's men leading the prisoners through the streets. 4 of them, 2 men and 2 women, bound in chains. They look surprisingly ordinary, dressed plainly, tired but not especially dangerous. Yet the people around you hiss and mutter as they pass. Stole my best cloak last winter, an elderly woman grumbles. Hope they hang 'em all this time. Doubt it, someone else says. They always slither out of it. Got too many friends at court, if you ask me. The procession arrives at the town square, where a temporary court has been set up. At its centre sits a stern-faced official in tailored robes, flanked by clerks and attendants. You gather he's no ordinary magistrate. This is a travelling justice, sent directly by the Crown to preside over important cases beyond the scope of local law. Curious, and increasingly invested in how justice really operates here, you decide to stay and observe. Geoffrey can wait a little while longer. One by one, the warrants are brought before the makeshift bench. A clerk reads out a list of charges: theft of expensive cloth worth 60 shillings, clothing valued at 8 shillings, and numerous other items taken over the years. It's an impressive rap sheet. And yet, watching this unfold, you're struck by how normal the accused look. Not monsters or villains, just people who, somewhere along the line, learned how to survive by taking what wasn't theirs. And now they may finally face consequences, or not. In a world like this, whether someone is punished can depend as much on who they know as what they've done. Given everything you've come to understand about how justice operates in this time, you expect the Warrant family's long list of offences to result in severe punishment. But as the trial unfolds, things take an unexpected turn. Witnesses who had seemed confident and furious while gossiping in the crowd suddenly grow vague and unsure when called to the stand. Testimony weakens. What appeared to be damning evidence is now dismissed or challenged. Then comes the verdict. The 12-man jury, locals all, declare the Warrant siblings not guilty on every count. The announcement stirs a wave of disbelief through the crowd, but there's no outrage. Just a resigned murmur. This isn't the first time the Warrants have pulled off a miraculous escape. It won't be the last. The family walks free, their expressions unreadable. They don't celebrate. They don't act surprised. They simply walk away, as if they'd expected this all along. Nearby, you catch part of a hushed conversation between 2 well-dressed men. That silver was well spent, one of them says with a smirk. Those jurors know who fills their plates. The other man replies, the sheriff won't be thrilled. This is the 3rd time this year. The first man waves his hand dismissively. The sheriff's in on it. Why else do you think the warrants always seem to disappear right before the watch arrives? The implications are as clear as they are troubling, while the justice system here can be terrifyingly swift and violent. It's also riddled with cracks, and those with money or influence know exactly how to slip through them. Bribery, backroom deals, and selective enforcement all warp the scales of justice in favour of the connected. As the crowd begins to disperse, you find yourself walking beside an older man who had watched the trial with visible frustration. He glances at you. "First time you've seen them dodge the gallows?" he asks. You nod, cautious not to say too much. "It's been like this for years," he mutters, shaking his head. Their brother, John, got hanged back in 21 for taking a few garments worth 8 shillings. Since then, the rest have learned to spread the coin around. Jurors, bailiffs, even the under-sheriff, or so they say. You frown. Isn't that dangerous? Paying off officials? The old man barks a bitter laugh. Not if you know what you're doing. Safer than stealing outright. Corruption runs through the whole system, from petty clerk to royal judge. Why? Just a few years back, the top judge in the whole kingdom, William Thorpe, Chief Justice of the King's Bench, got thrown in prison for taking bribes. Everything he's saying lines up with what you've heard and read. While justice in medieval England was designed to be harsh and frightening as a deterrent, its actual practice was far from consistent. If you had money or friends in the right places, you could often avoid punishment entirely. The poor, on the other hand, had no such protection. For them, the system showed no mercy. Before you can reply, shouting erupts from a nearby alley. The crowd shifts, people rushing toward the sound, and you follow instinctively. In a small square outside a church, a man is sprinting away from several others. "Stop thief!" someone cries. At once, the bystanders join in pursuit without hesitation. You realize what you're witnessing, the hue and cry. It's the medieval version of a citizen's arrest. By law, anyone who hears the shout must join the chase. There's no opting out. The fleeing man looks terrified. His eyes dart left and right, desperate for an escape. Suddenly, he makes a sharp turn toward the church, clearly hoping to claim sanctuary before he's caught. For a moment, it seems he might succeed, but then he stumbles. The crowd closes in. He's tackled roughly, grabbed by half a dozen hands. He kicks and shouts. "I didn't do anything," he cries out. "You've got no proof." One of the men holding him growls, "Why, saw the purse in your hand, and the lady over there saw you take it." A woman in a finely tailored dress steps forward, her finger pointing with certainty. "That's him," she declares. "He cut my purse while I was leaving the market." The thief's expression shifts instantly. His hope gone. The crowd parts as more of the sheriff's men arrive, taking hold of the man and recovering the stolen item, a small drawstring pouch, evidently sliced clean from the woman's belt. What happens to him now? You ask a nearby onlooker. That depends on what's in the purse. They reply casually. If it's worth more than 12 pence, he'll hang. If it's less, he might just lose a hand or take a whipping. The way it's said, matter of fact unbothered, sends a cold shiver through you. Here, life and death can hinge on a coin's value. Stealing anything above a shilling was classified as grand larceny, a capital crime, punishable by death. As the captured man is dragged away, you notice something others didn't. A small wooden token that had fallen to the ground during the scuffle. When no one's watching, you stoop to pick it up. It's rough, but carved with a distinct symbol. A dagger crossed with what appears to be a key. You're not sure what it means, but it feels deliberate. You slip it into your pocket and head back to Geoffrey's home. After the day you've had, your job watching over the merchant's goods feels even more important. Inside, you find Geoffrey hunched over his ledger in the counting room, running his finger along rows of figures. He looks up as you enter and gestures for you to take a seat. You saw the warrants walk free, he says, not really asking. I did, you reply, and I saw a pickpocket get caught just afterward. Geoffrey sighs weary. Two sides of the same coin. One man swings, another buys his way out. That's the world we live in. He leans back, steepling his fingers. But that's not why I called you in. I've got a task for you. One, I need someone I can trust. He explains that another shipment is arriving tomorrow. Larger, far more valuable than the one you guarded previously. He wants you to accompany his son to meet it outside the city walls and escort it back safely. There's been talk, he says, lowering his voice, of a gang preying on wool shipments. 3 merchants were ambushed last month on the North Road. I'd send more men, but I need them here at the shop. Too big a party draws attention anyway. The job sounds risky, but also like a chance to better understand this time and its dangers. You agree? Geoffrey seems pleased. Good. You'll ride with my son, Richard. Leave at first light. 6 pence for the job, more if all goes well. With your duties outlined, you spend the rest of the day pitching in, moving bundles of wool, delivering messages, and getting a crash course in the wool trade, which powers much of Lincoln's wealth. Later, back in the storeroom, you pull out the token. Alone with your thoughts, you study it again. The carving, though crude, is distinct a dagger over a key. A badge of membership, perhaps, or a gang mark. Either way, it doesn't seem random. Your musing is interrupted when Richard walks in. He's younger than you by a few years, with sharp eyes that echo his father's, though his smile is far more open. Father said you're coming with me tomorrow, he says, giving you a once-over. Ever had a run in with highwaymen? You admit that you haven't. Let's hope tomorrow doesn't change that. Richard jokes. But then he reaches under his tunic and pulls out a small dagger. He hands it to you, just in case. Keep it on you. These roads, they're not kind anymore. You thank him and slide the blade into your belt. It's nothing fancy, but solid, useful in a pinch. Richard gives a quick nod. Rest up. We ride before sunrise. That night, as you lie awake on the same scratchy pallet, your thoughts refuse to settle. Images from the day whirl through your head. The trial, the crowd, the swift capture of a thief, and the way the warrants walked free. In this world, fairness is a rare luxury. Justice, it seems, has a price. A purse thief about to be executed. A strange symbol etched into a wooden token. And now, you're preparing to leave behind the relative safety of Lincoln to venture onto the unpredictable, bandit-ridden roads of medieval England. Just as you're finally starting to drift off to sleep, a faint noise jolts you back to full awareness. Someone is in the storeroom with you, stepping softly between the stacked bales of wool and barrels. You remain completely still, focusing on your breath, one hand inching silently toward the dagger tucked at your side. The footsteps draw nearer, then stop. A voice whispers from the darkness, barely more than a breath. I know you're awake. Don't move. It's impossible to tell whether the speaker is a man or a woman. You stay frozen, pulse hammering in your ears, as the unseen visitor kneels close to your bedroll. The token you picked up today. The voice continues. Where is it? You're stunned. How could they possibly know about that? Don't play dumb. The voice hisses, a sharp edge in their tone. The wooden disc, dagger and key. Hand it over, and I leave quietly. Realizing denial is pointless, you slowly reach into your pocket. The figure snatches the token the moment it's in your hand. Who are you? You manage to ask, what does it mean? A brief pause follows, like they're weighing the risk of saying too much. Then, it's a guild mark. For thieves. The man who lost it would have paid dearly for that mistake. You did him a favour by picking it up first. A thieves' guild. You're not entirely shocked. Guilds are common in this era. Organised groups of craftsmen, tradesmen, even merchants who regulate their profession. It makes a strange kind of sense that thieves would organise the same way. The warrants, you say aloud, drawing a connection, are they? A quiet chuckle cuts you off. You're sharp, but you'd be wise to stop asking questions. Especially in a town like this, outsiders don't last long poking their noses where they don't belong. The intruder begins to retreat, then stops. Take this to heart. The north road's being watched. Tell Geoffrey to send his goods out through the east gate instead. Before you can respond, they vanish into the dark. You're left alone, heart racing, the warning echoing in your mind. Was it a genuine tip, or a misdirection? And how did they know about Geoffrey's plans? Sleep won't come now. You lie awake, turning the pieces over and over in your head, waiting for daylight. By the time Richard arrives to wake you, you're already dressed, bleary-eyed but alert. You look like you saw a ghost, he says, noticing your drawn face. You pause, then choose to share part of what happened. Someone broke in last night. They warned me. Said the north road isn't safe. That we should leave through the east gate. Richard's expression hardens. They knew our route. That's too specific. He narrows his eyes. Wait here. I need to speak with my father. He returns moments later with Geoffrey, who wears a look of serious concern. Tell me exactly what was said. The merchant insists. You repeat the warning, leaving out the part about the token. As you speak, Geoffrey and his son exchange wary glances. It could be a setup, Richard says. They warn us away from the north road, so we head east and walk into an ambush. Or it's a genuine warning, Geoffrey counters. Maybe from someone working for me who can't speak openly. Either way, we can't postpone this. The buyer's already paid. Backing out now would damage my name. He paces the storeroom deep in thought. Then he stops and looks up. Here's what we'll do. You'll leave through the north gate like planned. But a mile out, take the west fork. Circle back to the east road from there. It'll add an hour, but might help you avoid anyone lying in wait. You nod, knowing your journey just got a lot more complicated. The plan makes sense, and soon you and Richard are on the road, mounted atop sturdy, dependable ponies. They're no elegant war horses or regal chargers, but they're strong and reliable, perfect for this kind of journey. The streets of Lincoln are just beginning to stir, with shopkeepers opening shutters and smoke curling from chimney tops. The guards at the northern gate barely acknowledge you as you pass. Their attention is fixed more on those entering the city than anyone departing. Once through the gate, the countryside unfurls before you, rolling fields and pockets of woodland stretching into the distance. The road is little more than a muddy ribbon cutting through it all. Keep your eyes open, Richard says, nodding toward a thick patch of trees ahead. They usually strike just before the road disappears into that forest. That's the dangerous stretch. You acknowledge with a nod, hand instinctively resting on the dagger tucked at your belt, your senses sharpening with every step your pony takes. The sky is bright and blue, the air fresh. You pass travellers heading toward Lincoln, farmers hauling produce, a solitary monk walking with measured steps, and a group of merchants deep in conversation. At the planned turn-off, Richard veers from the main road, guiding you onto a narrower, lesser used track. This side path snakes between open fields where peasants are already hard at work. Bent over with hoes and baskets, they pause to look up as you pass, their sun, darkened faces etched with years of toil. Most crimes happen in the towns. Richard comments, noting your gaze. Out here everyone knows their neighbours. Strangers stick out. The people might look rough, but if they saw a robbery, they'd sound the alarm before you could blink. Does that actually stop highwaymen? You ask. He shrugs. It makes them more careful. They strike fast and vanish into the trees before anyone can react. Sometimes they pretend to be injured travellers and strike when someone stops to help. That bit of news doesn't exactly ease your nerves. As the path begins to narrow, trees crowd the track, casting long shadows that linger even under the morning sun. This is the kind of place where anything, or anyone, could be lurking. Richard draws his weapon. It's not a gleaming knight's sword, but a short, functional blade, clearly used more for defense than ceremony. Stay close, he whispers. And if I say run, ride hard. Don't wait. You nod, gripping your reins tighter as you ride into the gloom. The forest is eerily quiet now. The cheerful bird calls from earlier have faded, replaced by rustling leaves and your pony's nervous breathing. Every shadow seems to move. Every twig snap feels like a warning. Then, without warning, the path is blocked by a tree lying clean across the trail. Richard halts immediately, eyes scanning the brush on either side. That wasn't here yesterday, he murmurs, and it's been chopped down. This was deliberate. You don't need to be told it's a trap. It's simple but effective. To clear the way, you'd have to get down, leaving yourselves exposed. Or worse, you'd have to detour into the deeper forest where visibility is nearly non-existent. Richard doesn't hesitate. Back to the fork, he says briskly. We're going back to the main road. You turn your ponies, moving at a steady pace. Not fast enough to raise alarm, but swift enough to show urgency. Just as you near the edge of the woods, 3 mounted riders appear, blocking the way. Halt. One of them shouts.
In the sheriff's name!
Richard doesn't even flinch. Those aren't the sheriff's men, he mutters. Wrong route. Wrong timing. They wouldn't announce themselves like that. Bandits. You ask, your throat dry. Definitely, he replies, keeping his tone low. Listen carefully. When I move, ride hard to the right, straight through the trees. There's a stream beyond the brush. Follow it south, and it'll bring you back to the main road. From there, ride for Lincoln, and don't look back. You start to protest, but he's already stepping forward.
We're not carrying anything of value.
He calls to the figures ahead. Just heading out to meet a wool delivery. The lead rider lets out a harsh, mocking laugh. Then handing over your coins. Won't hurt much, will it? Drop your weapons and whatever money you've got. We'll let you go after that. But Richard reacts unexpectedly. Rising in his saddle, he points behind the bandits and shouts, "Sheriff's men? Behind you?" Run. It's a classic feint, and 2 of the attackers instinctively glance over their shoulders. In that brief moment of hesitation, Richard spurs his mount forward, charging directly at them with his sword raised high. Go! Now, he yells back to you. You don't wait. Digging your heels into your pony's sides, you veer off the path, plunging into the woods as instructed. Behind you, the air erupts with shotting and the clash of blades. Richard engaging the bandits in a risky bid to buy your escape. Branches whip across your face, thorns scrape at your legs, and your mount fights its way through the dense underbrush. The noise of the fight fades, replaced by your ragged breathing and the thudding of your pony's hooves. Then, just as Richard said, a narrow stream appears, winding its way through the trees. You steer south along the bank. The terrain becomes easier as the woods thin out beside the water. After what feels like far too long, but is probably only 10 minutes, you burst onto the main road. Up ahead, the path to Lincoln is clear, the city's tall cathedral spires reaching into the sky like beacons. But you hesitate. Richard, his instructions were clear: get help. But going all the way to Lincoln and back would take the better part of an hour. That fight in the woods may already be over, one way or another. Just then, luck shifts. From down the road comes a mounted patrol. 5 men, heavily armed, riding well-bred horses. Their leader, a stout man with steel, grey hair and a stern face, wears the sheriff's badge on his chest. These are no impostors. You ride toward them, waving and calling out.
Bandits!
They've attacked a merchant's son. The commander reins in quickly, eyes narrowing. Where? Half a mile in. Down the western trail, you say, pointing. 3 of them. They cut a tree to block the road. Without pause, he turns to his men. Thomas, stay with this one. The rest, with me. And with that, they thunder off in the direction you came from. Thomas stays behind, eyeing you with suspicion. What were you doing down the western trail? That path's mostly abandoned. You explain about the warning you received, how Geoffrey had changed your route to avoid a possible ambush on the main road. As you speak, Thomas's face softens. Smart move, he says. But seems the brigands were a step ahead. We've been trying to catch this lot for weeks. The sheriff will be glad if this is finally the end of them. You wait, nerves gnawing at you, eyes fixed on the tree line. Did Richard make it? Should you have spied and fought? Each minute stretches like an hour. Then, at last, the riders return. And with them, Richard. He's bruised and bloodied, with a nasty cut above his eye and his left arm cradled carefully, clearly injured. But he's alive, and the grin he gives when he sees you is full of relief. You got help, he calls out. Nicely done. 2 of the bandits ride with the group, now bound and looking thoroughly defeated. The 3rd, you're told, didn't survive the encounter. These 2 will swing, says the sheriff's officer, without emotion. Highway robbery is a capital crime. But first, they'll talk. We want to know where the rest of their gang is hiding. As you and Richard ride back toward Lincoln, escorted by the sheriff's men and their prisoners, he recounts what happened after you fled into the woods. His opening charge had unseated one of the attackers, but then the remaining 2 closed in, forcing him into a desperate fight for survival. I've never been happier to see the sheriff's crest, he says, wincing as his pony jolts his injured arm. If they'd shown up even a few minutes later, I wouldn't be here. Back within the safety of the city walls, the scene shifts into controlled chaos. The captured bandits are led straight to the castle dungeon under heavy guard. A physician is summoned to tend to Richard's wounds. Meanwhile, you find yourself relaying the entire ordeal to Geoffrey, who alternates between visible relief that his son made it home and frustration over the risk both of you were exposed to. This has to stop, he mutters. These roads must be secured. I'm going to speak with the sheriff myself. As Richard is helped away to be treated, he pauses and catches your eye. You handled yourself well out there, he says. Most wouldn't have kept their head. The compliment lands with unexpected weight. Despite the uncertainty, the danger, the complete unfamiliarity of this world you've proven yourself. In just a short time, you've gained trust, taken action that mattered, and helped bring real criminals to justice. Later that evening, you're served a generous meal by Geoffrey's wife, thick stew, fresh bread, and sweet dark ale. As you eat, your thoughts tumble back over the day's events, the ambush, Richard's bravery, your own role in securing help, and the fact that two notorious highwaymen now sit behind bars. You can picture it already. Tonight, taverns across Lincoln will echo with retellings of your adventure, embellished with each new version. But your mind isn't at ease. You keep circling back to that silent visitor in the night. Was the warning about the North Road sincere? Did they actually save your life? Or were you deliberately sent into a trap on the Western Trail? And what about the so-called Thieves' Guild? Could there really be a formal criminal organization operating in and around the city, like a shadow version of the merchant guilds? The questions swirl as you prepare to rest. You're worn out from the day's chaos, but one thing is clear. Your understanding of medieval justice, crime, and survival is just beginning. There's much more to uncover. When morning arrives, a buzz of excitement grips Lincoln. The capture of the highwayman is all anyone can talk about. As you work in Geoffrey's shop, helping weigh and cut wool, customers stream in eager to trade gossip. I heard they're part of a big gang. One man says, watching as Geoffrey measures fabric. Maybe 20 strong, holed up somewhere near Sherwood Forest. They'll talk. Another customer says, his voice grim, give him a few hours on the rack, and they'll name every outlaw from here to Dover. You flinch at the mention. Even though trial by ordeal had been outlawed in recent years, torture still lurks in the shadows of medieval justice. The rack, in particular, is infamous, designed to stretch the body until joints dislocate, bones crack, and pain forces confession. Geoffrey notices your reaction. After the shop clears out, he speaks softly. Not all who are accused face such extremes, he says. Some confess quickly and are granted a swift execution, and then there are those who avoid punishment altogether. The warrants, you say quietly, thinking of the slippery family of thieves who walked free. His expression darkens. Some escape through corruption, yes, but not all. There are other ways. There were, it turns out, plenty of ways to slip through the cracks of medieval justice. If you knew how. One curious method Geoffrey mentions is something called benefit of clergy, a legal loophole that favoured the literate. You'd heard a bit about it before. Those who could demonstrate the ability to read were often tried by church courts instead of secular ones. And since the church didn't hand out death sentences, it was often a way to escape execution altogether. All they have to do is read a passage. You ask. Geoffrey nods. Usually Psalm 51, the so-called neck verse, and no one expects eloquence. The courts are generous when it comes to what they consider reading. It's a favoured escape route for the educated criminal. And as the day goes on, you begin to learn just how many alternatives there were to the gallows. Pregnant women, for instance, could have their executions delayed, sometimes indefinitely. Those who agreed to serve in the king's military might be granted a pardon, and seeking refuge in a church could buy someone 40 days of legal immunity. Lincoln Cathedral's seen its share of fugitives. Geoffrey remarks as the two of you pause for a midday bite. Bread, cheese, and plain water. Step inside, and the law can't touch you for 40 days. And then you ask. Then you choose, he explains. You surrender and face trial, or you take the cross and leave England for good. Live, you repeat, surprised. It's called adjuring the realm, Geoffrey says. They walk to the nearest port, wooden cross in hand, and board the first ship out. If they come back, execution on sight. You try to picture what it must be like, being forced to abandon everything, home and family included, just to escape the hangman's rope. And yet, compared to death or mutilation, exile might actually feel like mercy. Your thoughts are interrupted by a noise outside. Richard, his wounded arm now properly wrapped, is standing in the doorway of the shop. "They're bringing the prisoners to the castle," he calls. "Half the town's come out to watch." Geoffrey sighs, clearly resigned, but gives you permission to go. "Just be back before sundown," he says. "We've got a shipment to ready." You and Richard step into the bustling street, swept up in the flow of townsfolk, all heading in the same direction, toward Lincoln Castle. It's not solemn or grim. On the contrary, the mood feels oddly celebratory. Vendors have set up stalls selling warm pies, cider and roasted nuts. People jostle for better views. People love a spectacle. Richard mutters as you move through the crowd. Executions draw even more. Some even bring their kids. The nonchalance hits you hard. To the modern mind, the idea of public execution is grim, even horrifying. But here, it's part of life, an event, a warning, even entertainment. As you approach the castle gates, the noise swells. The 2 captured bandits are being marched through the entrance, shackled and heavily guarded. Stripped of the menace they exuded in the woods, they look like what they really are: tired, frightened men, clothes tattered and faces grim. Someone near you spits on the ground as they pass. "Hang the bastards," he bellows. A few others echo the sentiment with angry shouts. The guards pick up their pace, quickly ushering the Kazaners into the castle to shield them from the growing hostility of the crowd. Will they be tried first? You ask, raising your voice over the din. "Of course," Richard says. "But it's a formality. They were caught red-handed, and there are more than enough witnesses, including us. The outcome's already written. They'll be swinging before long." Eventually, with no more drama to watch, the crowd starts to thin out, drifting away in small groups. Richard suggests stopping by a nearby tavern to decompress, and you agree, grateful to leave the heavy mood behind. The tavern is warm and packed, thick with the scent of roasting meat and the murmur of spirited conversation. You manage to squeeze into a spot at a long wooden table while Richard heads off to the bar and returns with 2 brimming tankards of ale. "To surviving our first brush with bandits," Richard says, raising his tankard with a grin. You tap your mug against his, and both of you take a long drink. The ale isn't strong, but it's cool and soothing after the dusty chaos of the day. As the chatter of the tavern hums around you, your eyes drift to a corner of the room where a group of men sit watching the entrance with an unusual level of focus. One of them has something resting on the table in front of him, and your heart skips. It's the same wooden token, unmistakably carved with a dagger over a key. You try not to stare, and instead lean toward Richard, keeping your tone light. "Interesting mix of people in here," you observe. "Do all sorts come through?" He nods casually. "Absolutely. Traders, craftsmen, pilgrims passing through, even clergy from the cathedral, though they usually pretend not to enjoy themselves." He takes another sip of his drink. "And yes, likely a few criminals too." "Criminals," you repeat, playing surprised. "Even this close to the sheriff's stronghold." Richard chuckles. "Especially this close. Ever heard the saying, 'The wolf sleeps at the shepherd's door'?" It applies. Besides, how can you tell? That well-dressed merchant could be smuggling silk. That kindly monk over there might be altering scrolls. Outward appearances don't tell the whole story. He has a point. In this world, criminals often blended in seamlessly. Many were ordinary people driven by hard times. Others kept up a front of respectability, while living double lives. Your musing is abruptly cut short as the tavern door swings open and conversation dies instantly. A man steps inside, flanked by two others who carry themselves with the unmistakable posture of lawmen. All three wear tunics, marked with the sheriff's crest. The leader slowly surveys the room. His eyes pass over you without pause, but hover on the group in the corner, the ones with the token. After a moment's quiet tension, he strides to the tavern keeper, murmurs something brief, and then exits with his companions. No arrests, no confrontation, just quiet scrutiny. As soon as the door shuts behind them, the tavern explodes back into talk, louder than before. What was that about? You ask, glancing at Richard. Routine sweep? He replies, voice lowered. Sheriff's men check the taverns regularly. They're on edge, lately with all the attacks on merchants. Looking for known troublemakers, or people who don't fit. You glance back to the corner where the token had been, only to find the men gone, their cups still on the table. We should head back, Richard says, noting the setting sun. Father's expecting us. You walk together through the evening streets, your thoughts racing. The Thieves' Guild. Their token. Was that group connected to the robbers you encountered? Or to the Warrant family? How widespread is this operation? How many people in Lincoln are part of it? Or protecting it? Back at the shop, Geoffrey is waiting, clearly impatient. Finally, he says, waving you both inside. I need help checking inventory. Tomorrow's wool shipment is the biggest of the season. Everything must be perfect. The rest of the day vanishes in a blur of work. Measuring wool, marking ledgers, double, checking weights and storage arrangements. Geoffrey's business runs like a well-tuned machine, and you gain a deep respect for how complex an exact medieval trade can be. Every fleece must be tracked, taxed, and certified. Even local tariffs can impact profits. As dusk settles in, Geoffrey closes the ledger with a satisfied nod. Good work, he says. You've more than earned your place today. Tomorrow's going to be hectic, Geoffrey says, stretching his back. But if everything runs smoothly, there'll be a little extra in it for you. You thank him, grateful, and start toward your now familiar sleeping spot in the storeroom when a sudden knock echoes from the shop's front door. Geoffrey frowns. It's late, and he isn't expecting anyone. Who's there? He calls out. A message from the sheriff. Comes the reply. Geoffrey moves to the door and cracks it open. Outside stands a young man wearing the sheriff's livery, looking more anxious than authoritative. Master Geoffrey? The messenger asks. I am. The sheriff requests your presence at the castle, urgently. It concerns the prisoners captured yesterday. They've made allegations. The sheriff believes you should hear them in person. Geoffrey's expression tightens. The sheriff, at this hour? He glances back at you and Richard, then nods. Very well. Both of you come with me. If this is about the ambush, we may need your testimony. The journey to Lincoln Castle feels heavier than before. The streets are nearly deserted, darkness gathering in alleyways and corners. With no street lamps in this age, most people stay indoors after sunset. The few you pass walk quickly, lanterns in hand, eager to reach their homes before night fully claims the town. The castle looms ahead, solid and ominous under the fading sky. The gate guards recognize Geoffrey immediately and wave you through after a few quick words. Inside, the young messenger leads you through stone passages and open courtyards until you reach a chamber where the sheriff waits. He's a formidable man in his 40s, with a neatly trimmed beard and the sun-worn face of someone used to working outdoors. His clothes are finely made but practical, and even indoors, a sword hangs at his waist, a silent reminder of his authority. Master Geoffrey, he greets, giving a respectful nod. His eyes then shift to you and Richard. These are the individuals present during yesterday's incident. Geoffrey confirms it, and the sheriff gestures for you all to take seats around a heavy oak table. I'll get straight to the point. He begins. We've questioned the prisoners, and they've made some unsettling claims. According to them, the ambush wasn't random. They were hired to target your shipment specifically, Master Geoffrey, hired by someone who had detailed knowledge of your logistics. Geoffrey blanches slightly. Someone from my own household. That's absurd. My people are loyal. Perhaps, the sheriff says, unconvinced. Or perhaps someone's loyalty has a price. The bandits knew more than they should have, especially about your change of route to the western track. Someone informed them. You and Richard lock eyes, the same thought forming in both your minds. The stranger who had warned you away from the North Road. Was that warning actually part of the setup? Did they name their contact? Geoffrey asks sharply. No, the sheriff replies. They insist they received orders through intermediaries. They never met the person behind it all. He reaches into his belt pouch and pulls something out, placing it on the table in front of you. It's a small wooden disc, etched with a symbol you now recognize instantly, a dagger crossed over a key. Have any of you seen this before? The sheriff asks. You freeze unsure whether to admit your earlier discovery. But before you can speak, Geoffrey leans forward. I've seen similar tokens around town, he says carefully. Some say there's a guild of thieves using them to identify themselves. I always assumed it was just tavern gossip. The sheriff's mouth tightens. It's more than gossip. We've been tracking this guild for some time. They're highly structured, with operations that stretch beyond Lincoln. This token confirms they're involved in these highway attacks. He turns to you, now gaze sharp. You're new to Geoffrey's household, aren't you? Arrived just a few days ago. The sheriff's question cuts through the room like a blade. There's suspicion in his tone, and it makes your pulse quicken. Yes, sir, you respond evenly, trying to sound composed. I was looking for honest work, and Master Geoffrey hired me to help protect his goods. Convenient, the sheriff remarks, showing up just before a targeted ambush. Before you can say more, Richard jumps in. They saved my life, he says firmly. Rode off alone to find help. If they were involved, I'd be dead and the wool gone. The sheriff gives him a long look, then nods. A fair point. Still, I need written accounts from all of you about what happened, and anything else that might be useful. What follows is an extended questioning session. A clerk sits nearby, diligently recording your responses. You recount the ambush with care, how the road was blocked, how Richard fought, how you found the sheriff's patrol. But you hold back the full truth. You don't mention the late night visitor or the token you picked up. Something about the situation feels more layered than it seems. Your instincts tell you now is not the time for full honesty. When the sheriff is satisfied, he lets you go, though not without a warning. You'll all be summoned to the trial 2 days from now, he says. Until then, be cautious. Trust no one. The walk back through Lincoln's now dark streets is silent and somber. The idea that someone within Jeffrey's small circle could be feeding information to criminals weighs heavily. I don't believe it, Richard mutters at last. No one in our household would do this. Jeffrey's response is slower, more grim. People can be bought or threatened. The guild doesn't play fair. If someone's child or spouse was in danger, or if the coin was tempting enough. Back at the house, Jeffrey wastes no time. He gathers his small staff, 5 people in all, not counting you and Richard, and explains the sheriff's suspicions. He watches their faces as he speaks. If any of you knows anything, he says, now is the time to come forward. I can shield you from the guild, but not if you continue to act against me. The reactions seem genuine. Confusion, fear, denial. The elderly woman who oversees the household mutters a prayer and crosses herself. A young apprentice looks like he's going to be sick at the mention of the guild. After dismissing the others, Jeffrey turns to you. I believe Richard's judgment, he says. If you were working against us, you had every chance to let that ambush succeed. Instead, you saved my son and the shipment. That earns my trust. You thank him, grateful to know your position in his household is safe. For now. But rest still doesn't come easy. As you lie on your pallet that night, your mind spins with everything you've seen. The bandits, the shadowy figures in the tavern, the warning, the secret token. The Thieves' Guild is real, and its reach is wide. Just as your body begins to relax into sleep, you hear it again, the faint, deliberate steps on wooden boards. You sit up immediately this time, your hand already on the dagger Richard gave you. Who's there? You whisper. A hooded figure steps from the shadows, cloaked and unreadable in the dark. Quiet, they say. I bring another warning. Another one, you say skeptically, keeping your grip on the knife. Last time you sent us down a path swarming with bandits. There's a pause, then a dry chuckle. And yet here you are, alive, and with 2 of our more reckless members now in chains. I'd say things worked out better than expected. You repeat, incredulous. We nearly died, but you didn't. The figure replies calmly. You lived. Richard lived. And 2 who broke our rules will swing for it. Balance, as it were, has been restored. Sometimes justice has unusual methods. The comment lands like a puzzle, offering no comfort and raising more questions. You're saying the ambush wasn't authorized by the guild. You ask. The guild forbids attacks on Lincoln's merchants. The hooded figure replies, moving closer but staying just beyond clear visibility. It draws the wrong kind of attention. Those men acted without approval. They flashed guild tokens they had no right to possess. They've already paid the price. The implications are chilling. If this so-called Thieves' Guild has enough sway to arrange the elimination of its own rogue members through the legal system itself, then its influence must be broader and more strategic than you imagined. Why tell me any of this? You ask, suspicion creeping into your tone. Because you're in danger. The figure says plainly. The sheriff, convinced. There's a traitor working within Jeffrey's household. And if he can't find the real one, he might choose someone at random to take the fall. Someone expendable. Someone like you. The thought sends a cold shiver through you. In a world where reputation is everything and judicial outcomes can depend on appearances, you, a recent arrival with no allies, no family, and no social standing, would make the perfect scapegoat. What can I do? You ask. Stay away from the wool shipment tomorrow? The figure replies, make an excuse. Remain in Lincoln. Then go to the cathedral around noon. Look for a chalk mark, a small drawing of a key, on the third pillar inside the south transept. If it's there, it means I'll be waiting at sunset. You'll find me at the old mill outside the east gate. You start to ask another question, but the figure has already melted into the darkness. One moment they were there, the next, the stillness of night. Now, alone once more, your head spins with doubt and half-formed theories. Sleep is a struggle. When dawn finally breaks, it feels like only moments have passed since you closed your eyes. Your thoughts are still spinning as Geoffrey begins assigning tasks. You're to assist with the collection of the wool shipment at the city gates. But you hesitate. Is it a routine job or a trap? After a moment's thought, you approach Geoffrey. If it's all right with you, sir. You begin carefully. I was reviewing yesterday's inventory and noticed we'll need more space than we currently have. If you agree, I could stay behind today and get the storeroom prepared. Geoffrey eyes you thoughtfully, then nods. Smart thinking. Richard and the others can handle the pickup. You get the storeroom ready. I want everything perfect when the shipment arrives. With your assignment redirected, you begin clearing shelves, shifting bales, and reorganizing the space. The physical effort is strenuous, but keeps you from raising any suspicion. And it gives you time to think. As midday nears, you slip away with the excuse of fetching supplies for the reorganization and head toward Lincoln Cathedral. The cathedral is magnificent, its soaring Gothic spires and delicate stone carvings towering above the town. Even by modern standards, it's breathtaking. Inside, the vast nave is cool and dim, coloured light from the stained glass windows casting shimmering hues across the stone floors. You walk the aisles with the posture of a curious onlooker, but your real destination is the third pillar in the south transept. You find it easily. Etched faintly in chalk, there's the symbol a key, small and subtle, but unmistakable once you're looking for it. Your chest tightens. The sign confirms the meeting is on. But should you go? Was this just another setup? Last time, the advice led you straight into a trap, though you survived barely. And now you're being asked to trust again. Yet, if what the figure said is true, if the sheriff is desperate for someone to blame, then their warning might be the only protection you have. You return to Geoffrey's shop with the question still burning in your mind, uncertain whether tonight will bring answers or more danger. The afternoon slips by in steady, productive work. Bit by bit, the storeroom transforms, made ready for the large wool delivery. Before long, Richard and Geoffrey return safely, their cart piled high. Both men seem visibly relieved. No trouble on the road. Richard tells you as you help unload the bundles. The sheriff had guards posted all over. No thief in his right mind would try anything with so many armed men about. As evening begins to fall, you're faced with your final choice. The meeting place? The old mill past the east gate. Sits outside the protection of Lincoln's walls. Going there after dusk could be risky, but the lure of discovering more about the Thieves' Guild and possibly protecting yourself from future suspicion is hard to ignore. In the end, your curiosity and a strong instinct for self-preservation win out. You approach Geoffrey with a casual request. I'd like to stop by the market before it closes, you say. Shouldn't be long. He agrees, though his expression is wary. Be careful. People are jumpy with all this talk of thieves and conspiracies. You slip away as the last light begins to fade. The east gate, less trafficked than its northern and southern counterparts, is quiet. It leads to outlying hamlets, not main roads. The guards posted there barely glance your way as you exit. The old mill lies roughly a quarter-mile beyond the walls. It's clearly abandoned, the wheel cracked and useless, the pond beside it overgrown with reeds. The structure leans slightly with age, its frame warped and silent, but its very isolation makes it a perfect meeting spot, hidden yet not far from help. The sky glows orange and violet as you approach, heart pounding with unease. For a long moment, there's no sign of anyone. You wonder if you've made a mistake walking into something you don't understand. Then, a shadow moves. From the mill's doorway steps a cloaked figure. But this time, it's not your previous contact. As the figure pushes back their hood, you see an older man, graded, neatly groomed, eyes sharp and discerning. "So you came," he says simply. "Good. We have much to discuss, and not much time." "Who are you?" you ask, keeping your distance. "My name's irrelevant," he replies. "What matters is I speak for the guild, and we have a shared problem to address." "The guild," you echo, pulling the wooden token from your pocket. "The one you picked up from the thief and never had the chance to return." His eyes flick to the item. "Ah! One of ours. You've been collecting our belongings, then?" "Yes, that's an authentic guild marker. But as you've probably been told, the men you met in the woods had no right to carry it." You frown. Why would a thieves' guild care about unauthorized theft? The man gives a faint, tight-lipped smile. "Because we're not just criminals. We're an actual guild, structured, regulated. We establish rules, enforce discipline, protect our own, and yes, punish those who defy our code." "You've got rules for outlaws?" You ask, incredulous. "Call them survival strategies," he corrects. 1. The punishment for stealing a crust of bread is death. Structure is your only shield. We don't allow unnecessary violence. We forbid attacking local traders. Bad for business. And we definitely don't support open banditry on roads near the city. You're beginning to see it now. Not a loose pack of thieves, but a disciplined, if illegal, network with its own set of values and codes. The sheriff suspects someone in Jeffrey's household is working with you. You say, "Is that true?" The man's expression stays carefully neutral. The truth doesn't matter now. What does matter is that the sheriff feels pressure to deliver a result. The merchant guild wants someone held accountable, and since you're new alone and unconnected here, you make an easy scapegoat. Your pulse quickens. Then, what am I supposed to do? "We can get you out of Lincoln tonight," he says calmly, "before anything worse finds you. We can give you enough coin to make it to the next town." The man continues. "Someplace beyond the sheriff's immediate reach." "And why would you do that?" You ask, wary of this sudden offer of assistance. The man's expression softens into something more sincere. "Let's just say we see promise in you. You've shown judgment, adaptability. Those are valuable traits on either side of the law. Is this an attempt to recruit you?" The thought is unsettling, but there's also a strange, reluctant pride stirring in your chest. Still, fleeing the city now would only stoke suspicion. It would look like an admission of guilt. "I haven't done anything wrong," you say, holding your ground. "Running would only make me look guilty." "Maybe," he replies. "But innocence won't shield you from a justice system that's desperate for someone to blame." He lets that sink in for a moment, then adds, that if you won't leave, there's another possibility. We can give you the name of the real informant, someone in Jeffrey's household. That stops you. It's exactly what you need. And yet, you can feel the trap in the offer. Who is it? You ask. There's a cost, he says. Nothing criminal. Not yet. Just a little cooperation. What kind of cooperation? You press, already knowing you won't like the answer. Discretion, he replies. Perhaps letting us operate quietly near Jeffrey's shop, or passing along the occasional detail about high-value goods moving through town. Not to steal, just to levy a private tax. He's asking you to be an informant. The very role you're trying not to be accused of. Your head spins with the moral weight of the situation. Here in Lincoln, justice is harsh, law enforcement is uneven, and desperation pushes many to the brink. The line between criminal and victim is often razor thin. Before you can respond, a sharp sound cuts through the night, the pounding of hooves approaching fast from the direction of the city. The man swears under his breath, sheriff's man. You were followed.
I was cautious.
You protest, though your pulse is hammering with fear. No one saw me leave. Not cautious enough, he mutters, already retreating toward the dark edge of the mill. Now you're trapped. Come with me, he urges, or stay, and try to explain to the sheriff why you're meeting one of us out here after dark. Your mind races. Running makes you look guilty, but staying with a known guild contact would do the same, especially if the sheriff's hunting for someone to pin this on. And then, in the frantic space of a heartbeat, a third option comes to you. Wet, you say urgently. Neither. We need to look like we're here on legitimate business. The man blinks, then nods, catching on fast. He reaches into his belt, pulls out a small pouch, and tosses it into the weeds near the collapsed water wheel. Then he steps a few paces away from you. As the riders come into view, you raise your voice, pitching it like you're mid-negotiation. 15 pennies. You say loudly. That's my final offer for the fishing rights. And that's being generous considering the state of this pond. Without missing a beat, the older man snaps back, 17 or nothing. I've got another bidder from Sane. Mary's parish willing to pay full price. The patrol arrives just then. The lead rider, clearly the commanding officer, brings his horse to a stop, eyes scanning the scene. He's wearing the sheriff's insignia. Behind him, 5 more men fan out, hands resting near their sword hilts. What's your business out here, this close to curfew? The leader demands, eyes locked on you. You nod toward the decrepit mill, trying to negotiate fishing rights on behalf of my employer. Master Jeffrey, the wool merchant. The parish has let this mill fall into disrepair, but the pond still holds fish. We thought we might supplement our household stores. The sheriff's man turns his attention to your companion. And you are Walter Fletcher. The guild member replies smoothly, using what you assume is a false name. I oversee the church lands in this district. This mill hasn't ground flour in years, but I'm authorized to lease the fishing rights. The leader dismounts and walks a slow circle around you both, clearly not entirely convinced. Unusual hour for such negotiations. My fault entirely, you admit, adopting an apologetic tone. I only learned of the opportunity this morning, and wanted to secure it before anyone else could. Master, Jeffrey keeps us quite busy during regular hours. One of the other riders has been examining the area and approaches his leader. No other horses, he reports. If they rode here, they didn't tether their mounts nearby. We walked, Walter explains. It's a short distance from the gate and a pleasant evening for it. The leader's suspicion hasn't fully abated, but without evidence of wrongdoing, he seems reluctant to take action. After a tense moment, he remounts his horse. The curfew bell will ring soon, he warns. I suggest you conclude your business quickly and return to the city. These roads aren't safe after dark. You both nod respectfully, and the riders continue on their patrol, though one glances back several times as they move away. When they're safely out of earshot, you exhale slowly, the tension draining from your body. Quick thinking. The guild member murmurs appreciatively. Many would have panicked. It seemed the only way that didn't immediately condemn us both, you reply. But I doubt they're completely convinced. Convinced enough to continue their patrol rather than arrest us. He points out in these uncertain times, that's a victory. The encounter has resolved nothing about your larger dilemma. However, you're still potentially under suspicion, and the guild's offer of evidence against the real informant in Geoffrey's household remains pending. About your offer, you begin, but the man holds up a hand to stop you. Not here. Not now, he says quietly. We've tempted fate enough for one evening. The guild will contact you again when it's safe. He glances at the darkening sky. The curfew bell will ring soon. You should return to the city. And you. He smiles mysteriously. I have my own ways. But before you go, he moves to retrieve the sack he threw into the weeds earlier. Take this a gesture of good faith. You accept the small leather pouch cautiously. Inside are several silver pennies, more money than you've earned in your entire time with Geoffrey. I can't. You can, and you will? He interrupts firmly. Consider it payment for your discretion. And remember, the guild protects those who prove themselves worthy of protection. With that cryptic statement, he pulls his hood back over his head and moves away toward a copse of trees beyond the mill, soon disappearing into the gathering darkness. You pocket the silver, uncomfortable with accepting what is essentially a bribe, but aware that refusing might have consequences of its own. Then you hurry back toward the east gate, reaching it just as the curfew bell begins to toll across the city. The guards eye you with mild disapproval, but let you pass without comment. Lincoln, after curfew, is a different place. The streets nearly empty, windows shut. Only the occasional watchman, with a lantern, patrolling the main thoroughfares. You keep to the shadows as much as possible, not wanting to explain your late return to anyone you might encounter. When you arrive at Geoffrey's house, you find it unusually quiet. No lamp burns in the shop window, and the main door is barred from within. This is strange. Geoffrey typically keeps the shop illuminated until he retires for the night. A small luxury that marks his prosperity. You move around to the service entrance at the rear, which is used by the household staff. To your relief, it's unlocked. You slip inside, listening carefully for any sounds of activity, but the house remains eerily silent. Geoffrey, you call softly. Richard, no response. Growing increasingly concerned, you light a small oil lamp from the embers in the kitchen hearth and begin to search the house. The main living area is empty, as is Geoffrey's counting room. Moving upstairs, you find the family bedchambers similarly deserted, the beds unslept in. A cold knot of apprehension forms in your stomach. Where is everyone? Has something happened while you were meeting with the guild member? The storeroom where you sleep is your last stop. As you push open the door, the lamp's light falls on a figure sitting on your pallet. Richard, his expression grim. There you are, he says, his voice oddly flat. We've been looking for you. What's happened? You ask immediately. Where's your father? Everyone else. Richard stands slowly at the castle. The sheriff sent for us again, just after you left for the market. He's arrested Edward for conspiracy with the Thieves' Guild. Edward is Geoffrey's young apprentice, a quiet boy of perhaps 16, who has worked in the shop for the past year. The accusation seems absurd. Edward had always struck you as almost painfully honest, more likely to report wrongdoing than participate in it. Edward, that makes no sense. You say that's what Father said. Richard agrees, but the sheriff claims to have evidence, a guild token found among Edward's possessions and testimony from one of the captured bandits naming him as their informant. You think back to the wooden disc you saw in the tavern, identical to the one the sheriff showed you, and the one now in your pocket. If Edward had such a token, it would indeed be damning evidence. But something about this doesn't feel right. Is Edward confessing? You ask. Richard's expression darkens further. He denies everything, of course. Claims the token was planted in his belongings, but under questioning. He hesitates, clearly disturbed by whatever he's about to share. The sheriff used persuasive methods. Edward eventually said whatever they wanted to hear. Torture, in other words, the thought makes you sick. Edward is little more than a boy, certainly not a hardened criminal capable of orchestrating highway robberies. That's wrong, you say firmly. Edward wouldn't betray your father. Someone else must be responsible. Richard studies your face in the lamplight. Father thinks the same. That's why he sent me back here to find you. He's worried that whoever planted evidence on Edward might try to do the same to others in the household. A chill runs through you at these words. The silver pennies in your pocket suddenly feel like burning coals. If the sheriff's men were to search you now, how would you explain them? Or the guild token for that matter? Where are the others? You ask, referring to Geoffrey's small household staff. At the castle, still being questioned, Richard says, Father insisted on being present for each interview. He runs a hand through his hair, clearly exhausted. It's been a difficult evening, and Edward Richard's face falls. He'll stay in the dungeons until the trial. 2 days from now, alongside the highway robbers, he meets your eyes directly. Father doesn't believe Edward is guilty, but the evidence is strong. Unless something changes, he'll likely hang. The injustice of it burns in your chest. Edward facing execution for a crime he almost certainly didn't commit, while the real conspirator remains free, and you with guild money and a token in your possession potentially next in line. For accusation, we need to find the real informant, you say with sudden determination. How? The sheriff thinks he's already found his man. You consider your options carefully. You could reveal what you know about the guild, including your meetings with its representatives, but that might only cast suspicion on yourself. Without concrete evidence pointing to someone else, your testimony alone wouldn't save Edward. Let me think on it. You say, finally, perhaps there's a way to uncover the truth without putting others at risk. Richard nods, too tired to argue. Father will return when the questioning is complete. Try to get some rest until then. But rest is impossible. After Richard leaves, you examine the guild token and silver pennies by lamplight, wondering if these items that now incriminate you could somehow be used to save Edward instead. A radical idea begins to form in your mind. What if you could catch the real informant in the act, force them to reveal themselves, or provide evidence the sheriff couldn't ignore? It would be dangerous, possibly fatal, if you miscalculated. But the alternative is watching an innocent boy hang while you live with the knowledge that you might have saved him. You're still turning over possibilities when Geoffrey finally returns well past midnight. He looks haggarded, his normally confident bearing replaced by the slump shoulders of a man carrying a heavy burden. Richard said he found you, he says warily, sinking onto a chair in the kitchen where you've been waiting. Did he tell you about Edward? You nod, pushing a cup of watered wine toward him. He accepts it gratefully. It's nonsense, Geoffrey continues after taking a long drink. Edward is no traitor. But the sheriff is under pressure to resolve this quickly. The merchant guild wants the roads safe for commerce, and the easiest way to achieve that is to hang someone, guilty or not. What if we could find the real informant? You suggest carefully. Geoffrey looks up, a spark of interest cutting through his exhaustion. How? You've been refining your plan over the past hours, and while it's still dangerous, it might just work. We create an opportunity too tempting to resist, you explain. Announce another valuable shipment, but tell different details to different members of your household. When the thieves act on specific information, we'll know who leaked it. A trap, Geoffrey says, considering the idea, but the risk would be primarily mine, you assure him. I'd coordinate with the sheriff to have men in position to catch any attackers, and if the real informant is someone outside my household, or if the Thieves' Guild doesn't take the bait, these are valid concerns. Then at least we'll have demonstrated reasonable doubt about Edward's guilt, you say. Enough perhaps to spare his life, if not clear him completely. Geoffrey stares into his cup for a long moment. It's a desperate plan, he says finally, but these are desperate times. I'll not stand by while an innocent boy hangs for something he didn't do. He looks up, meeting your eyes. What do you need from me? By morning, your plan is in motion. Geoffrey calls his remaining household staff together and announces an unprecedented opportunity. A rush order for the finest wool from a merchant in London, offering double the usual price if it can be delivered within the week. This could be the most profitable transaction we've ever made, he tells them, his acting convincing enough to draw excited murmurs from the assembled staff. But secrecy is essential. Our competitors would do anything to intercept this shipment. He then speaks to each person individually, giving slightly different details about the route, timing, and nature of the shipment. To his household manager, he claims the wool will travel by the North Road on Wednesday. To his shop assistant, the East Road on Thursday. To Richard, who is part of the plan, the South Road on Friday. To further sell the deception, Geoffrey makes visible preparations, ordering extra carts, discussing guard arrangements within earshot of the staff, sending messages to wool suppliers. The entire household buzzes with anticipation of the fictitious windfall. Meanwhile, you have a more difficult task, convincing the sheriff to cooperate. With Geoffrey's backing, you secure an audience at the castle, where you carefully present your plan. The sheriff, a pragmatic man despite his harsh methods, listens with growing interest. A clever trap, he concedes when you finish. But what makes you so certain Edward isn't guilty? The evidence against him is substantial. Edward has neither the contacts nor the cunning to orchestrate something like this, you argue. And he certainly doesn't have the temperament for betrayal. Someone else is using him as a scapegoat. The sheriff studies you thoughtfully. You seem very invested in this matter for someone who's only recently joined Geoffrey's household. It's a dangerous moment. Your enthusiasm could easily be interpreted as suspicious in itself. You choose your next words carefully. I know what it's like to be judged unfairly, you say, allowing genuine emotion to colour your voice. Edward reminds me of my younger brother. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to help him. Whether it's your sincerity or simply the opportunity to capture more criminals. The sheriff eventually agrees to position men along all 3 potential routes. But he warns as you leave, if this trap catches nothing, it changes nothing for Edward. The evidence against him remains. You understand the stakes perfectly. If your plan fails, Edward hangs, and you might well join him if any suspicion falls on you instead. The next 2 days are a blur of preparation and tension. You help Geoffrey main the charade of the valuable shipment while secretly coordinating with the sheriff's men. The selected routes are scouted, hiding places identified, signals arranged. Throughout it all, you watch the household staff carefully, looking for any sign of suspicious behaviour. A staff member leaving the house at unusual hours perhaps, or displaying unexpected wealth. But everyone seems genuine in their excitement about the London order, giving you hay. Tonight we're diving into a fascinating journey through medieval England's criminal underworld. Ever wondered what would happen if you suddenly found yourself as a law breaker in those harsh, unforgiving times? You're about to find out just how quickly your criminal career might come to an end in a world where justice was swift, brutal, and often unpredictable. But before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in medieval England sometime in the 13th century. The year is 1202, and you find yourself in Lincoln, a bustling northern city with impressive stone buildings and narrow winding streets filled with the pungent smells of daily life. The morning bells ringing from the magnificent cathedral that dominates the skyline. People are already busy at work setting up market stalls, hauling goods, and going about their business. The good news is that you've awakened in one of England's important cities, a place of commerce and opportunity. The bad news, Lincoln, despite its modest population of about 7,000 souls, is experiencing what you might call a crime wave. This small city has recently seen 114 murders, 89 robberies with violence, and 65 woundings in fights. And yet, only 2 people have been executed for these crimes. Those odds might seem encouraging if you're planning a life of crime, but don't get too comfortable. Medieval justice has ways of catching up to you when you least expect it. You rise from your straw pallet in a small, drafty room above a tavern. The wooden floorboards creak beneath your feet, and through the small window you can see the morning mist clinging to the cobbled streets below. You're hungry. You have no money. And in this unfamiliar world, you're considering how to survive. Perhaps a bit of theft, maybe picking a pocket or 2 in the busy marketplace. Before you make that fateful decision, you should understand what you're getting yourself into. In this world, law and order operates very differently from what you're used to. There are no police officers patrolling the streets, no forensic evidence, no surveillance cameras. But there's something else that might be even more effective. Everyone knows everyone else in their community, and strangers stand out like a peacock in a chicken coop. As you step out into the narrow street, the cold morning air filling your lungs, you notice a wooden gibbet standing ominously at the city's edge. A body hangs there, swinging slightly in the breeze, the remains already picked out by birds. It's been there for weeks, a grim reminder of what happens to those who break the law and get caught. The sight sends a shiver down your spine, but you're desperate and need to survive. Thinking of causing trouble, are you? comes a gruff voice beside you. An older man with a weathered face and a grey beard has appeared at your side. I wouldn't if I were you. See that poor swell on the gibbet? That's what happens when you cross the sheriff or steal from the wrong merchant. But I've heard people get away with all sorts of crimes here, you reply, thinking about those statistics. The old man chuckles, a dry sound like leaves rustling. Some do until they don't. The law may be slow, but it has a long memory. And it's not just the law you need to worry about. It's the people. Try stealing from a baker, and his entire guild will be after you. Rob a merchant, and his family won't rest until you're caught. We take care of our own here. You ponder this as you walk toward the market square, your stomach growling with hunger. The temptation to simply grab an apple from a vendor's stand is strong, but you hesitate remembering the old man's warning and the body on the gibbet. In medieval England, even the smallest crimes could lead to severe punishment. You wouldn't have the luxury of modern legal protections. Trials were quick affairs, often based more on your reputation than actual evidence. If people suspected you were of bad character, that alone could be enough to convict you. As you wander through the market, you notice how differently the various social classes are treated. A nobleman strides confidently through the crowd, which parts respectfully before him. His fine clothing and sword mark him as someone of importance. Meanwhile, a ragged beggar is being roughly pushed away from a baker's stall by 2 burly apprentices. "Get away with you!" One of them shouts. "No begging here," or "We'll call the constable." The beggar shuffles away, muttering under his breath. You realize that your appearance might already mark you as suspicious. Your clothing is strange by their standards, and you carry yourself differently. People are already giving you curious glances. In medieval society, your place was largely determined by birth, and trying to rise above your station could be seen as troublesome or even criminal. Vagrancy, wandering without purpose or visible means of support, was considered an offence. If you couldn't show that you belonged somewhere or had legitimate business, you might be accused of being a vagabond, which could lead to punishment. Your stomach growls again, louder this time. A woman selling bread gives you a suspicious look. You need to find a way to earn some money. And, quickly, before hunger drives you to make a decision you'll regret. Approaching a burly man loading barrels onto a cart. You ask if he needs any help. He looks you up and down, assessing your worth. "You look strong enough," he says finally. "I could use another pair of hands loading these barrels onto the cart. I'll give you a penny and a meal for your trouble. It's not much, but it's honest work. And right now, staying on the right side of the law seems like your best option." As you help load the heavy barrels, feeling the rough wood against your palms, you strike up a conversation with the man, hoping to learn more about this new world you found yourself in. "Been in Lincoln long?" The man asks, grunting as he lifts a barrel. "I'm just passing through," you reply, not wanting to reveal too much. "What's it like living here?" The man wipes sweat from his brow. "It's a good city mostly. Sheriff keeps order when he can, though there's been more trouble lately than I care for. Just last month, a gang broke into Thomas the silversmith's shop, took everything he had, and beat him half to death. The constable caught one of them, but the rest got away." "What happened to the one they caught?" you ask, already suspecting the answer. "Hanged, of course," the man says matter-of-factly. That's what happens to thieves when they're caught. Though, if you steal something worth less than 12p, you might just get flogged or put in the stocks instead. You help the man finish loading his cart and true to his word, he gives you a penny and leads you to a nearby tavern where you're served a bowl of thick pottage, a stew of barley, peas and root vegetables, and chunk of coarse bread. It's hardly gourmet fare, but it fills your belly. As you eat, the tavern fills with locals ending their workday. The atmosphere is lively with people drinking ale, playing dice, and sharing stories. You listen carefully, picking up bits of information about life in medieval Lincoln. A group of men at a nearby table are discussing a recent trial by ordeal. Did you hear about William the Tanner? One of them says, accused of stealing a silver goblet from the church, had to carry a red-hot iron bar 3 paces. And another asks, eagerly his hand fested. Guilty as sin he was. They'll hang him next week. You almost choke on your bread. Trial by ordeal. It sounds barbaric, but it was a common method of determining guilt in the early medieval period, reflecting the belief that God would intervene to protect the innocent. By 1202, the year you found yourself in, trial by ordeal was still practiced, though it would be officially abolished in 1215, when the Pope decided that priests should no longer participate in such trials. The alternative, which was becoming more common, was trial by jury, though not the carefully selected evidence, weighing juries of your time. These were groups of local men who often already knew the accused and based their verdict largely on the defendant's reputation and their own knowledge of the community. As night falls, you need to find somewhere to sleep. With your penny, you might be able to secure a space on the tavern floor among other travellers, but the prospect doesn't appeal. Instead, you decide to inquire about more work, hoping to find a place that might offer lodging as well. The tavern keeper points you toward a merchant's home, where they might need an extra hand. Tell Geoffrey that Watt sent you. He suggests he's always looking for strong arms to help with his wool business. You thank him and make your way through the darkening streets. Medieval cities didn't have street lighting, and after sunset, most honest folk were indoors. Being out at night without good reason could itself be suspicious. You hurry along, keenly aware of eyes watching from shadowed doorways. The merchant's house is larger than most, with a shop at the front and living quarters behind and above. A young apprentice answers your knock, eyeing you warily. I was sent by Watt from the tavern, you explain. I'm looking for work, and he thought Geoffrey might have some. The apprentice disappears inside, returning moments later with an older man dressed in good quality, but not luxurious clothing. This must be Geoffrey the wool merchant. What sent you? Did he? Geoffrey's eyes are shrewd, assessing. I do need someone to help guard my shipment tonight. I have a cart of wool arriving, and these days you can't be too careful. Can you handle yourself if trouble comes? You nod, hoping you won't actually have to test your medieval combat skills. I can, sir. Good. You'll stay with the cart once it arrives until morning. I'll pay you 3 pennies for the night's work, and you can sleep in the storeroom tomorrow. It's a fair offer, and certainly better than ending up in trouble with the law on your very first day in medieval England. You agree, and Geoffrey shows you where to wait for the cart. As darkness fully descends on the city, you find yourself standing at the edge of the merchant's property, waiting for the wool shipment. The streets are nearly deserted now, with only the occasional watchman carrying a lantern patrolling the main thoroughfares. From nearby taverns, you can hear muffled singing and laughter, but otherwise the night is eerily quiet compared to the cities you're used to. The cart arrives just before the city gates close for the night. 2 men accompany it. The driver and another guard, both looking tired from their journey. They eye you suspiciously until Geoffrey appears and explains that you'll be helping to guard the valuable cargo overnight. Don't let anyone near it. Geoffrey instructs as the cart is secured in his yard. Wool fetches a good price these days, and there are plenty who'd steal it if given half a chance. You nod solemnly, resolving to stay alert despite your fatigue. The other guard will take the first watch while you rest. Then you'll switch midway through the night. As you settle down to wait for your shift, you reflect on what you've learned so far about crime and punishment in medieval England. It's a world where justice can be harsh and arbitrary, where your fate might depend more on your reputation and connections than on actual evidence. The punishments, hanging, flogging, mutilation, are designed not just to punish the guilty, but to serve as terrible warnings to others. Yet, despite these deterrents, crime clearly flourishes. The disparity between rich and poor creates temptation, and the lack of consistent law enforcement means many criminals do escape justice. It's a precarious balance where the fear of punishment competes with the desperation of need. Your contemplation is interrupted when the other guard nudges you awake for your shift. The night is at its darkest now, the stars obscured by clouds, and a light rain has begun to fall. You pace around the cart, staying under the shelter of a nearby overhang when possible. Your senses alert for any sign of trouble. Around midnight, you hear footsteps approaching. Several people trying to move quietly, but not entirely succeeding. You duck into the shadows, your heart pounding. Are you about to witness an attempted theft? Should you raise the alarm or wait to see what happens? 3 figures appear at the edge of the yard, moving toward the cart. They're dressed in dark clothing, their faces partially covered. One carries what looks like a small pry or crowbar. You clear your throat loudly. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The figures freeze. Then the largest of them steps forward. And who might you be? His voice is low, threatening. I'm guarding this cart for Geoffrey, the wool merchant. You reply, trying to keep your voice steady. And I suggest you move along before there's trouble. The man laughs, a harsh sound in the quiet night. 3 of us, 1 of you. I'd say the trouble's already here. You're about to respond when a window above opens and Geoffrey's voice rings out. What's going on down there? John, William, get out here. The would-be thieves exchange glances, clearly reconsidering their plan now that others are being alerted. After a tense moment, they back away, disappearing into the darkness with a muttered threat. We'll remember you, stranger. Geoffrey appears in the yard, moments later, along with 2 burly men who must be his household servants. Were they after the wool? He demands. Yes, you confirm. 3 of them. They ran off when they heard you. Geoffrey nods grimly. It's becoming all too common. Last month, Martin the dyer had his entire stock stolen. Found one of his apprentices with a knife in his back. He sighed heavily. There was a time when a merchant could do business without constant fear of theft and violence. Do the sheriff's men not patrol? You ask. Geoffrey snorts. The sheriff has just a handful of men for the entire city. They can't be everywhere. And truth be told, some of them are no better than the thieves themselves. This glimpse into the reality of law enforcement in medieval England is illuminating. Unlike the organized police forces of your time, law enforcement in the Middle Ages was often ad hoc and inefficient. The sheriff was the king's representative, responsible for keeping the peace, collecting taxes, and carrying out sentences, but he had limited resources. Day-to-day policing often fell to local watchmen or citizens themselves through systems like the hue and cry, where everyone who heard a call for help was obligated to join in pursuing a criminal. Corruption was also a significant problem. As Geoffrey hinted, some of those in positions of authority abused their power, accepting bribes to look the other way or even participating in criminal activities themselves. The rest of the night passes without incident, though you find it hard to relax after the confrontation. When morning comes, Geoffrey seems pleased with your performance and, true to his word, pays you 3 pennies and shows you to a small store room where you can rest. If you're looking for regular work, he adds, I could use someone like you. These are uncertain times, and I value those who can keep their wits about them. It's a generous offer, a chance at steady employment, and a place within the social structure of medieval Lincoln. As a merchant servant, you'd have a recognized position, food, shelter, and protection. In a world where being a wanderer without connections could lead to suspicion and trouble, this is no small thing. As you settle onto a pallet in the storeroom, exhaustion finally catching up to you, you consider your situation. You've managed to avoid breaking the law so far, finding honest work instead. But you've also seen how easily one could be tempted into crime in this harsh world, and how severe the consequences could be. The wool cart you protected represents significant wealth in medieval economy. Wool was one of England's most valuable exports, and in a city like Lincoln, the wool trade was central to the economy. Stealing such valuable goods would be considered a serious crime, one that could easily result in hanging if the thief were caught. You close your eyes, drifting towards sleep, still pondering the complexities of crime and punishment in medieval England. The gibbet on the outskirts of town, the tales of trials by ordeal, the will-be thieves in the night, all paint a picture of a society struggling to maintain order through fear and harsh justice. As you slip into dreams, you wonder what tomorrow will bring in this dangerous, fascinating world where the line between survival and criminality can be perilously thin. The lesson of your first day is clear. In medieval England, choosing a life of crime might bring quick rewards, but the consequences could be even quicker and final. You wake to the sound of the morning bells, sunlight streaming through the small window of Geoffrey's storeroom. For a moment, you're disoriented, still caught between the modern world you left behind and this medieval reality you now inhabit. The events of the previous day come flooding back. Your arrival in Lincoln, the close encounter with would-be thieves, and Geoffrey's offer of employment. As you stretch and rise from your pallet, you hear a commotion outside. Curious, you make your way to the front of the merchant's house, where a crowd has gathered in the street. People are pressing forward, craning their necks to see something. Their voices a mix of excitement and outrage. What's happening? You ask a young woman standing at the edge of the crowd. They've caught the Warrant siblings, she says, her eyes wide. The whole family's been stealing from half the town for years, and now they've finally been taken. In the name strikes a chord. You recall something about a family of thieves from the information you've gathered about this time period. The Warrants were notorious in Norfolk, not far from Lincoln. Repeatedly brought before courts for theft, but somehow always managing to avoid serious punishment. Intrigued, you join the crowd as they follow the prisoners toward the town centre. 4 people, 2 men and 2 women, are being led in chains by the sheriff's men. They look ordinary enough, not particularly ragged or menacing, just an unremarkable family. Yet, according to the whispers around you, they've been responsible for dozens of thefts. Took my best winter cloak. They did, an old woman mutters. Hope they hang the lot of them this time. Not likely, her companion replies. The warrants always find a way out. Too many friends in high places, if you ask me. As the crowd reaches the market square, you see that a makeshift court has been set up. A stern-looking man in fine clothing sits at a table surrounded by clerks and officials. This, you gather, is the visiting justice, a representative of the king, sent to hear cases too significant for local courts. Finding yourself unexpectedly fascinated by this glimpse into medieval justice, you decide to stay and watch. Geoffrey won't be expecting you back immediately, and this is an opportunity to learn more about how law works in this time. The warrants are brought forward one by one, their crimes announced to the assembled crowd. The charges are impressive. Stealing cloth worth 60 shillings, clothing valued at 8 shillings, and numerous other thefts. Given what you've learned about medieval justice, you expect these crimes to carry severe penalty